And it talks about how you need to strive not to be first always. Sometimes it's good to let other people go ahead. And then another book by the name of Threes, and it's a journey into how many times threes and sets of threes are used in the Bible. And it's quite interesting how many times things come in threes in the Bible. Those two are just available on audiobook and Kindle. But then I move into other books that are scriptural in nature. One of them is In Case You Were Wondering. And I wrote this book to appeal to young people who may not have a mentor in the faith, and they may not have uh, somebody to teach them, and they don't really want to go to church to learn it. But it's a good book that you could buy and give to some young person to introduce them to the gospel of Christ. And it answers a lot of questions. And then the next book in that series would be called The Second Adam. And it talks about how Christ is the second Adam. The first Adam failed, but the second Adam came and he gave us life again. And then another book entitled Walk Away. And it's an expose on how sometimes it's best just to walk away from confrontation. And it gives you some tips on how to do that and plenty of scripture to go along with that. And all of those are available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook as well. If you got Kindle Unlimited, you can read them for free because I've enrolled them in there. And then we come to a book that's special to my heart. And it's the only book that I've ever put out there and made it available in 4 formats: audiobook, Kindle, paperback, and hardback. I made a hardcover edition available for this because the book is so special to me. Let me tell you about it. It started off with me writing a book called Walking Backwards. And then a year or so later, I wrote a book called Discipleship. What happened? And then after that, I wrote another book called Church as You Knew It. And after I wrote the last book, the Lord spoke to me and he said, you know, those 3 books ought to all be together. And that's why I gave you all 3 of them. And so I did. And I combined them all into one book. And that book is The Path. And it's a journey of how I had to look at my life through a set of filters in my Christian walk and ring things back in and make things as scriptural as possible. And I think you'll enjoy it. And then after that, I've got some short stories. They're books of, 60 to 70, some of them 100 pages. And one's called Shmuel. And then I've got another one called Jesse. Then The Scarlet Cord. And then Out of Moab. Now, Shmuel is a fictional character who entangles himself with Matthew, the apostle, and comes to faith because of that. Jesse is a story of a social outcast, a fatherless young man who finds his way in life through a chance meeting with Jesus. And then Scarlet Cord, it's a retelling of the story of Rahab. And then Out of Moab is a retelling of the story of Ruth and Boaz. And all of these are just, they're all scriptural, but there is some fiction in them, some fictional characters. And then I've got another short story that takes place in the Old West. It's called Blood Brothers. This book here retraces some of my Native American roots. And when I was writing this book and researching for it, because I did more research on this book than I've done on hardly anything else, it brought me to tears several times because of the plight of the Native American, the things that they had to go through. But it's a good book. It's a good book about uh, an Indian, a Native American, and a settler who end up becoming the best of friends. They end up becoming blood brothers, and it's very intriguing. And then I have a book called Tribulation Saints, and it's my thoughts and scriptural background on the end times, eschatology, and how I think that all's going to play out. And then finally, I have a trilogy, and this was written over the past 10 years, and it's pure fiction and it's fantasy, and it's got some characters in there like the Yair, which are a race of people kind of like elves in Lord of the Rings or something. And then it's got some forest creatures in there that for the most part you could think of Sasquatch, but a Sasquatch that's very intelligent and can talk. And it's pure fantasy about a young man who is destined to become something great, but he has no idea that it's going to happen. And it covers the course of three books. The first book's called Lord of Honor. Then the second book is called Crossed Swords. And it doesn't mean crossed swords in the way that you're going to think. You have to read the book to find out. And then the last book is called, in the series, is called Kings Without Crowns. So these are all of my books. They're all available on Amazon. If you look in the description, there's a link to my page on Amazon, and you can go there and read them. God bless. Enjoy some good books.